McCroskey posted rap songs online under the name Syko Sam. He performs in the underground genre known as horrorcore.
Prosecutors say evidence is stacking up against a Castro Valley man suspected of a quadruple murder in Virginia.
I've been Commonwealth's attorney for 18 years and have probably prosecuted 30 homicide cases, and this by far exceeds the scope of any of those past investigations.
In September 2009, the sleepy town of FarmVille, Virginia, was forever changed. A brutal quadruple homicide rocked this close-knit community, a crime that would come to be known as the FarmVille Murders. Who you're looking at right now is Richard Samuel McCroskey, a troubled young man who would go on to commit one of the most disturbing crimes in Virginia's history. Today, we explore the life and actions of Richard Samuel McCroskey, whose online persona and personal demons culminated in one of the most disturbing cases of our time. Born on December 26, 1988, in Castro Valley, California, Richard Alden Samuel McCroskey III was an ordinary teenager on the surface. He was described as someone who was quiet and reserved, along with not having much of a social life. But behind his quiet demeanor, Richard nurtured an obsession with the macabre. Growing up in a family marked by turmoil and isolation, he turned to the emerging world of horrorcore music, a genre known for its graphic lyrics and fascination with violence. For Sam, this was maybe his way of trying to find something new, and fit in with people that had similar interests as him, since he couldn't fit in with other groups. Online, he adopted the moniker Syko Sam, using social media and MySpace to share his twisted artistic expressions. His pages were filled with dark lyrics and unsettling images, a window into a disturbed inner world that foreshadowed the tragedy to come. It was in this digital realm that Richard met Emma Niederbrock, a 16-year-old girl whose online friendship would ultimately change everything. Emma was a 16-year-old girl from FarmVille, Virginia, who grew up with her parents, Deborah Sue Kelly and Mark Allen Niederbrock. Deborah Kelly was an associate at Professor of Criminal Justice at Longwood University, and Mark Niederbrock was a pastor at Walker's Presbyterian Church in Hicksburg, Virginia. When she was younger, Emma was described as a sweet and kind girl, but as she grew up, things began to drastically change. Dyeing her hair heavy pink, along with using heavy eye makeup, Emma's parents were divorced, as this could have been her way of coping with the situation and trying to find an escape. As she grew more into the genre of horrorcore, Emma crossed paths with 18-year-old Melanie Wells, who was also a fan of horrorcore music. Emma and Melanie immediately grew close to each other and emerged as best friends. When both Emma and Melanie hung out with each other, they eventually bonded with other peers that were part of the horrorcore genre. Popular artists like Razakal and Siktanic were the ones that Emma and Melanie grew close with in the genre. Richard was also one who grew close with Razakal and Siktanic. Though Emma was happy about what she was doing, her parents weren't pleased with her new hobbies and aesthetics. But at the same time, they were willing to let their daughter do anything in order to keep her happy, especially since she was experiencing a tough divorce. Emma and Richard started talking to each other through MySpace sometime in 2008. They sent videos to each other and flirty text messages, growing their deep sensation for one another. Since they were both fans of horrorcore, their love and attraction for one another grew even further. However, what began as an online relationship soon grew complicated. Emma's casual messages, interpreted by Richard as signs of exclusive commitment, only deepened his fixation. As the digital conversation shifted from flirtation to obsession, a sense of impending tragedy slowly crept into his life. After a year of speaking to each other online, it was finally time to meet up in person. Richard, Emma, and Melanie decided to plan a trip up to Southgate, Michigan for a horrorcore event called Strictly for the Wicked. The event was scheduled on September 12, 2009, starting at 1:30 p.m. and ending at 11 p.m. Having this in mind, this was exciting for Richard, knowing that he would finally have something to look forward to. Not only because he dropped out of 2 different high schools due to bullying, but also because Richard's father told his mother to move out of the home 5 months prior. On September 7, 2009, 5 days before the concert started, Emma wrote on Richard's MySpace saying, "The next time you check your MySpace, you'll be at my house. I love you so, so much, baby. Forever and always. You are my one and only everything. I can't wait to see you, baby. It's like 6:17 a.m., and I've been up since 4-ish, filled with uber amount of excitement. I can't wait. I leave to pick you up in 5 hours. Gah, my insides feel all squishy." On September 7th or 8th, Richard took a flight from California to FarmVille, Virginia. It was now time for Emma to pick Richard up from the airport. Emma was nervous and excited to finally see Richard, but things didn't turn out the way it was planned. Emma was immediately turned off by Richard's appearance and character. What Emma saw in person wasn't the same Richard that appeared to be online. Though Emma immediately lost attraction for Richard, The focus was now onto the Horrorcore event. Emma and her parents, along with Melanie and Richard, all drove together to the event. As it was quite the distance, driving from FarmVille all the way to Southgate, Michigan. This drive was roughly 10 hours long back and forth and approximately 600 miles long. At the event, strictly for the wicked, things were going great for Emma, but not so much for Richard. Emma paid little to no attention to Richard at the event, as Richard's frustration grew even further. At the event, it was rumored that Emma was talking to other guys and doing everything she could to avoid Richard. While Emma was having a great time enjoying the event, Richard was nowhere to be found. You can probably guess at this point that Richard was filled with nothing but disappointment. What he had envisioned with Emma was quickly thrown away, as his level of vengeance would start to creep in. On September 14th at 2:43 a.m., Melanie posted on her MySpace saying, "SFTW was fucking amazing. Back in Virginia now. Be back in West Virginia on Wednesday. I miss everyone." Unfortunately for Melanie, it wouldn't turn out that way. Her parents began to grow concerned when they haven't heard from her in the past few days. Melanie's parents did everything they could to contact Emma and Melanie, but there was still no response. Since there were no answers for several days, Melanie's mom decided to call the police.
This is what doesn't make sense. I mean, my daughter was called.
Right.
So I just don't know what to think. What scared me earlier, she was saying, oh, there was noises in the basement coming from, in the house. And, I don't know.
All right, if you don't hear anything from her, then just call us back and I'll send an officer back over there.
Okay. Yeah, it just, like I said, none of this makes, any sense at all. I've heard that, they were supposed to be home by 9 this evening and then 10 and then, so I don't know.
All right, well, just try, wait and see if Melanie calls you in the next hour, and if not, call us back.
Melanie's mom also called Mark before he went to the house to check on the girls. After Melanie's mom called Mark again to check in, there was no answer. Melanie's mom now recommended for Richard to call the police, and believe it or not, he did. But when Richard called the police, he called due to a sound coming from the basement.
Phone 911.
Hey, could I have a police unit come by my house? Because I keep hearing sounds in the basement, and I'm scared to go down there and check what it is.
Okay, what kind of sounds do you hear?
Just noises, like something moving around down there. I think it's the dogs, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
We have 2 dogs, but one of them is upstairs. I just put him up there, and the other one might be down there, but I'm not sure if it's the dog or not.
Okay, and it's in the basement. What's your name?
Sam.
Police went to go check on the house once again, but there was nothing suspicious that they could think of. Richard responded very well to the police's questions, as he was later off the hook from anything else. It has now been 2.5 days, and there has yet to be a response made from any of the 4. Melanie's mom decided to give it another shot and call 911, as concerns were starting to rapidly grow.
And I don't know what else to do.
Okay, is your husband still here in FarmVille?
No, he's home. He came home.
Oh, okay.
He was going to head back down there tomorrow to pick her up, but everybody seems secured off the face of the earth, and I just don't know what to think. I checked the cell phone records with my cell phone company. The last time she used her cell phone, 1:28 in the morning on September 15th. And actually,
on September 18th, 2009, FarmVille police now decided it was time to search through the home. What police discovered was so horrifying that there was little to no description of the crime scene. The victims were confirmed to be Mark Niederbrock, Emma Niederbrock, Deborah Kelly, and Melanie Wells. All 4 victims died from blunt force trauma to the head by a wooden splitting maul. Deborah, Emma, and Melanie were all asleep when Richard decided to make his fatal move. On September 17th, 2009, Mark went inside the family home, but he was ambushed by Richard from behind. At this point, all 4 victims were now inside the house while Richard was inside the house for days. It isn't certain what exactly Richard was doing in the house during that period of time, but whatever he was doing, it is disturbing to think about. Though police found the victims inside the house, Richard wasn't anywhere to be found. On September 18th, 2009, at around 4 a.m., Richard vanished, stealing Mark's car. As he left the house with Mark's car, Richard crashed Mark's car. Luckily for Richard, he was only issued by police for driving without a license. The car that Richard crashed was taken away by a tow truck, as the tow truck driver took Richard to his destination. At approximately 6 a.m., Richard was dropped off at a convenience store. It was reported by the tow truck driver that Richard smelled so bad that he stunk like the devil. Though the tow truck driver was disgusted by the smell, Richard didn't seem to care at all. After his trip to the convenience store, Richard booked a cab to take him to Richmond International Airport. As the cab was on its way to the airport, the cab was pulled over by police due to speeding. Richard, again, didn't seem to care. He simply played it off and didn't show any signs of nervousness. Even hours after being in the house with all the victims, it is quite interesting how he moved on like nothing happened. With police having knowledge that Richard committed the brutal crimes, it was now time for the manhunt to track him down. On September 19, 2009, police ran into Richard at the airport in what appeared to be him sleeping. Richard had actually left a note of the airport's address, in which this was how police found him. During his arrest, it was reported that Richard didn't bathe at all while being in the house, along with having gore all over him. So, why did Richard do this? What was the reason for him committing these horrendous crimes? Was it because of the drugs he took that night? Was it because of the failed relationship with Emma? Or maybe was it because of the harsh rejection by Emma? Being constantly ignored? Talking to other guys at the event? You see, it was reported that Richard allegedly drank beer and smoked weed, along with taking painkillers. This all took place before the killings. It isn't quite sure why he did what he did, but it is safe to say that the reasoning for the killings was because of the failed relationship with Emma. But there was also a lot of speculation regarding the genre of horrorcore for the reason of the killings. Artists like Razakel, Siktanic, and another horrorcore artist named Mars received harsh criticism due to the killings. Our music wasn't playing in his ears when he bludgeoned 4 people. He did that on his own, Razakel said. In a brief interview, Mars was asked about the killings in regards to taking any sort of responsibility.
I mean, at what point do you accept any responsibility for lyrics that might have encouraged murder?
Well, I kind of figured, I'm doing my job, and as a horrorcore artist, I keep putting out extreme lyrics, offensive lyrics, the best music as possible. As an artist, that's my job, is making the best music possible within my genre. That's all I'm doing. Stephen King makes movies. He makes the best horror movies as possible. If somebody watches that and kills themselves, like Stephen King's not going to be like, man, I probably should.
Though there was a ton of finger-pointing for who was to blame for the murders, the theories in regards to the killings make sense, although it was Richard's fault. No matter what people think, this tragedy could have easily been avoided. First, it is very odd for Emma's parents to allow a stranger hang out with their daughter, especially without having any prior knowledge of who Richard even was until they met in person. Another odd and questionable thing was allowing Richard to sleep over at the house. Richard came from a long-distance flight, as flying from California to Virginia is quite the distance. But no matter how far he traveled, why were Emma's parents so open and welcoming to a complete stranger? Why did they think it would be a good idea to have Richard sleep over? These are questions that still remain up in the air. Another interesting thing to think about was the 10-hour car ride from FarmVille, Virginia to Southgate, Michigan. What were the conversations like? How often did Emma and Richard talk during the back-and-forth trip? What did Emma's parents talk to Richard about? What exactly did Richard say during the trip? Again, questions like these remain up in the air, but it is still interesting nonetheless. When it came to Richard's music, here is a song of his that mentions some disturbing lyrics called The Voices.
The evil voices, they're in my head. They wanna see me kill, they wanna see me dead. The evil voice.
Here is another of one of his songs that's called Murderous Rage. This one is far more disturbing.
Today is not your ordinary day. Last night I was the murderous rage, but now I gotta get rid of the bodies before the corpses start to get to rotting.
Not only are the lyrics chilling to think about, but how much the lyrics matched with the killings. The FarmVille Murders sent shockwaves across the nation. A brutal crime fueled by rage, betrayal, and obsession. But after the bloodshed, one question remained. What would justice look like for Richard? Richard McCroskey was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. He confessed in detail to the crimes, leaving little room for doubt. Despite the gruesome nature of his actions, McCroskey showed little emotion throughout the proceedings. His face often blank, his demeanor eerily detached. Prosecutors initially pursued the death penalty, given the horrific brutality of the murders. However, McCroskey's defense negotiated a plea deal, sparing him from capital punishment in exchange for guilty pleas on all charges. In September 2010, Richard stood before the court to face his sentence. His final words were brief, filled with hollow remorse. He simply said, "I'm sorry, I don't know what else to say. The judge sentenced McCroskey to life in prison without the possibility of parole, 4 consecutive life sentences, 1 for each life he took. There would be no chance for freedom or redemption, only the cold reality of a life spent behind bars. Richard is currently serving his sentence at Keene Mountain Correctional Center in Oakwood, Virginia, a far cry from the online persona he crafted as Syko Sam. His story is a chilling reminder of how obsession, unchecked rage, and isolation can spiral into unspeakable violence. While the story of Richard McCroskey is one of violence and darkness, it's important to remember that this case is not just about the killer. It's about the lives that were lost, the dreams that were cut short, the families that were shattered. Emma Niederbrock was just 16 years old, a vibrant, creative teenager with a passion for music and a love for her friends. She was known for her bright smile and unique spirit. Deborah Kelly, Emma's mother, was a respected professor at Longwood University. She dedicated her life to education and was admired for her intelligence, kindness, and strength. Mark Niederbrock, Emma's father, was a beloved pastor and community leader. His compassionate heart and unwavering support for those around him left a lasting impact on everyone who knew him. Melanie Wells, Emma's close friend, had traveled from West Virginia to spend time with people she trusted. She was known for her warmth, loyalty, and infectious laughter. They were more than just victims of a senseless crime. They were people with hopes, dreams, and futures ahead of them. Their lives mattered, and their memories deserved to be honored. May their memories live on, not defined by the tragedy that took them, but by the lives they lived and the love they left behind.